Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Monday, October 14, 2024. Democratic presidential nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, releases what her campaign calls an opportunity agenda for black men, while Republican presidential nominee, former President Donald Trump, is endorsed by the National Border Patrol Council, the union representing Border Patrol agents. Former President Bill Clinton campaigns for the Harris-Walz ticket in Georgia. Today's a federal holiday, Columbus Day, but there's an ongoing debate over whether to change it to Indigenous Peoples Day. We'll hear two perspectives from members of Congress. The U.S. is sending Israel a high-end air defense system known as THAAD, plus 100 U.S. troops to operate it. The Army Secretary and the Army Chief of Staff are asked about it today. And two deaths announced today. Lilly Ledbetter, former factory manager who became an equal pay activist with a federal law named for her, and Thomas Donahue, former CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Both were 86 years old. From CNBC, Vice President Kamala Harris unveiled an opportunity agenda proposal for black men Monday, which includes plans to provide $1 million forgivable loans to black entrepreneurs and new pathways to help black Americans succeed in the legalized marijuana industry. Former Congressman Cedric Richmond, a Harris campaign co-chair, said in a statement, this agenda is a further realization of Vice President Harris's opportunity economy, an economy where people don't just get by, but get ahead, where black men are equipped with the tools to thrive, to buy a home, provide for our families, start a business, and build wealth. Harris's announcement is aimed at increasing her support among black male voters and comes in the final weeks of an extremely close race between the Democratic vice president and Republican former President Donald Trump. That was the article from CNBC. Kamala Harris did an online interview released today with Roland Martin, journalist and commentator, in which she talks about her agenda, black voters, and Donald Trump.
This man don't want to help small businesses. He cares about the kinds of people who run the businesses he runs, big developers, billionaires. He's not looking out for middle-class folks. You look at what he is proposing in terms of cutting, if you look at the cost that middle-class families bear, healthcare costs. We have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Black folks are 60% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. Under Project 2025, they would undo that $35 cap. You look at what he is planning to do that is about getting rid of the Department of Education and Head Start programs. Who do you think that's going to affect? So there is, first of all, a danger in terms of understanding there are two choices in this election and understanding what Donald Trump intends for middle-class families. Two, look at it in the context of how he actually thinks and talks about black folks in America. And you and I have talked about this before. He is not looking out for folks when he was a landlord and would not rent to black families, sued for it, when he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times against those 5 teenagers, black and Latino, who were innocent, saying they should be executed in Central Park 5. When you look at the first black president of the United States, and he had birther lines, and now you look at black immigrants, legal immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, and he gets on a debate stage and says they're eating their pets? Come on. This man is dangerous. Not to mention, Roland, let's fast forward to right now. His staff won't let him do a 60 Minutes interview. Every president for the last half century has done one, anyone who's running for president. Everyone has done it, except Donald Trump. He will not debate me again. I put out my medical records. He won't put out his medical records. And you have to ask, why is his staff doing that? And it may be because they think he's just not ready and unfit and unstable and should not have that level of transparency for the American people. There's a real choice in this election.
Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, an online interview released today with Roland Martin. Vice President Harris is holding a campaign rally tonight in Erie, Pennsylvania, then traveling to Detroit. Her vice presidential running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, is in Wisconsin today, holding events in Eau Claire and Green Bay. On the Republican side, former President Donald Trump, the nominee, is holding a town hall meeting tonight in Oaks, Pennsylvania, and his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, making stops in Minnesota, Illinois, and Iowa. Story from Associated Press. Former President Donald Trump on Sunday proposed hiring 10,000 additional Border Patrol agents and giving them a $10,000 retention and signing bonus after he derailed a bipartisan bill earlier this year that included funding for more border personnel. Trump made his pledge during a rally in Prescott Valley, Arizona, roughly 260 miles north of the state's border with Mexico. He accepted an endorsement from the Agents Union, the National Border Patrol Council, which is a longtime Trump backer that endorsed him during his prior two campaigns. That was the article from Associated Press. Here is Paul Perez, president of the National Border Patrol Council, asked by Donald Trump to come on stage and say a few words in Prescott Valley.
America, I have a message for you. If we allow Borders R. Harris to win this election, every city, every community in this great country is going to go to hell. The untold millions of people, unvetted, who she has allowed into this country that are committing murders, rapes, robberies, burglaries, and every other crime will continue to put our country in peril. Only one man can fix that. That is Donald J. Trump. He has always stood with the men and women who protect this border, who put their lives on the line for the country. A man who knows about putting his life on the line for what is right. This November, we have a choice to make. Continue the chaos. Allow the criminal cartels to control the border, to allow drugs and fentanyl across our country, or put an end to it once and for all. On behalf of the 16,000 men and women represented by the National Border Patrol Council, we strongly support and endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States.
Paul Perez is president of the National Border Patrol Council, an affiliate of the American Federation of Government Employees Union, standing beside presidential nominee Donald Trump Sunday in Prescott Valley, Arizona. Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes, standing under the shade of a towering Chinese tallow tree, former President Bill Clinton stumped for Vice President Kamala Harris at a fish fry Sunday that brought memories of his own campaign strategy when he ran for president more than 3 decades ago. Clinton knocked former President Donald Trump and mocked Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance's debate performance. He said GOP policies had exacted a devastating toll on health care in rural Georgia, and most of all, he promoted Harris's campaign. That was from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Bill Clinton spoke again today in Columbus, Georgia.
I want you to celebrate on election night. I want you to be happy. And I want you to know that I am here because I believe, based on my personal knowledge of the job and the candidates, that Kamala Harris will be a fine president, will make a huge difference, that the risk that her opponent will actually do what he says. And now he says, oh, who are these 25 people? I don't know them. Well, President Trump, 144 of the writers were in your administration. It's just 144 of them. About that many, over 100, military and administration members from the Trump years have already endorsed Kamala Harris because they saw up close what happened to ordinary people. Don't be fooled. Just bear down. Have a good time.
Yes, we will.
Look for somebody in a MAGA cap to take a picture with. But don't forget, they'll be better off if you win. And you won't be better off if they win. So for the sake of the children, and those of you who have grandchildren, including me, please make sure we turn out. All we got to do is show up. If we show up, we'll win.
That's right.
And it's in your hands. God bless you. Thank you.
Former President Bill Clinton, Democrat, today in Columbus, Georgia. Early voting will kick off in Georgia on Tuesday, begins a Fox News article, but the two major political parties are still battling over how those ballots will be tabulated after Election Day. Democrats are in the midst of suing Georgia's state election board over a recently passed rule that would require all votes be counted by hand in each county after they are machine tabulated to ensure the totals match. Congresswoman Nikema Williams, Democrat of Georgia, chairwoman of the Georgia Democratic Party, told Fox News Digital earlier this month that the new rule's intent was to sow division and distrust and chaos in our election process. However, Republican Party officials in the Peach State have accused Democrats of misrepresenting the rule, which they have held up as a critical guardrail to ensuring voter confidence in the elections. There was an article from Fox News. Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, was interviewed today by Washington Post reporter Amy Gardner.
You were a party to that famous phone call on January 2nd, 2021, in which then President Trump asked you to find 11,779 votes when it looked like he had lost the race in your state to Joe Biden. And in fact, the race had been certified at that point. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you're combating misinformation and, as you put it a minute ago, conspiracy theories, and how much harder is it? Is it harder because some of those theories are actually coming from the top of the presidential ticket? For instance, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, has refused to say, given multiple opportunities by the press, that Trump lost the 2020 election. I wonder if you could talk about what it's like to combat that kind of misinformation coming from the top of the ticket.
Well, we want voters to have high trust, high confidence. So if you look at everything that we've done, since 2020, and even going back, to 2019 when I took office, we have a verifiable paper ballot. But this year, what we're going to do is the first time in America ever, we're going to be able to audit every single race that has been cast. So we have the ballot images after all those 5 million ballots are cast, absentee, early, or election day. We'll have those images, and we're going to be able to run those through a scanner with a tech company and read the human readable text of every single race, not just the president. We'll take that all the way down to the county surveyor, county librarian, and we'll be able to compare that to what you got with the machine totals. So that's one way that we're going to retally that and give you a 100% risk limit to help us, encourage and build trust with voters. We think that's really important. I think reporting those results real quick is another thing, having photo ID for all forms of voting. So everything we've done is to make sure that we can improve the accuracy and also then have, belts and suspenders. So no matter what people say, we're actually going to say we've already checked that. We also have the cleanest voter list in the entire country. We have the cleanest list, and we recognize that for several reasons. One is we're part of a 25-state, multi-state organization. Our secretaries, our office here will exchange our voter list with 25 other states. It's a confidential, secure way of doing that, so we can make sure that we don't have people on two different voter lists. Now, with our Department of Driver Services, all 49 other states, plus the District of Columbia, all of them, we get their driver's license. If you say move from Georgia to whatever state that is, Massachusetts, or it could be, Washington State, we find out about that, and then we can reach out to the voter to take them off the list because they have a driver's license in another state because they've moved there. We get death records monthly. And then we also have bilaterals with 4 states that pulled out of that multi-state organization. So everything we've done is to have clean and accurate voter lists, because people always said there's dead people voting. No, there aren't. I'm the first Secretary of State over 20 months ago to do an audit of the voter rolls to make sure only American citizens were on the voter list. And because we do a robust citizenship verification, we came back and we found 1,600 people who attempted to register but never got on the voter list. because our system was secure, our system checked that, and they couldn't prove citizenship. So we feel like we've got a lot of things in place so people can say things, but at the end of the day, the winner will be the winner, and the other person will be the person that comes up short. And we'll try and be as gentle as we share that, because we understand how polarized it is on both sides of the aisle.
Brad Raffensperger, Georgia's Secretary of State, Republican, interviewed today virtually by Washington Post reporter Amy Gardner. Michigan is not only one of the battleground states when it comes to the presidential election, but there's a U.S. Senate race going on there that's pretty close. Detroit News reports that Democrat Alyssa Slotkin and Republican Mike Rogers clashed in their first debate Tuesday, October 8th, on issues from abortion rights to a Chinese-linked battery plant to negotiating drug prices as they battle for Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat in one of the country's most closely watched matchups. C-SPAN covered this debate. Here is part of that exchange on the future of the Michigan auto industry.
Sales for EVs, compared to what had been projected by some auto dealers, are just not there. Still, in Michigan, we have plans for 2 EV battery plants, and they continue. We've seen the downsizing of the Blue Oval near Battle Creek, along with a plant proposed near Big Rapids that's been embroiled in controversy. Congresswoman Slotkin, here's the question. Are EV battery plants right for Michigan? And if they are, why are they? You have 60 seconds.
Sure. Look, I don't care what kind of car you want to drive. I don't care if it's a gas-powered car or an EV. I live on a dirt road. I can't have an EV for the foreseeable future. What I do care about is who is going to build the next generation of vehicles, right? Literally, it's either going to be us or China. Right now, China is eating our lunch on these types of vehicles. And Michigan has had the experience of missing these trends, right? In the 70s and 80s, we said, oh, everyone loves their big cars. No one ever is going to buy a little fuel-efficient vehicle. And then the Japanese and the Koreans came in and ate our lunch, and we've never made up that market share. So I do not care what you want to drive, but if the answer is who's going to build them, I want that to be Team America, not Team China. I want Michigan to build them. And to me, I just don't understand this idea of just ceding that ground to China. My opponent is happy to let them eat our lunch in places like Europe and South America. I am not willing to do that. American auto workers are the best, and they should make them.
Congressman Rogers, are EV plants right for Michigan? You have 60 seconds.
You know, I talked to a lot of these auto workers. As I said, I worked on the assembly line in Michigan. And I'll tell you what, they know more than what's coming out of Washington, D.C. 85% of everything that's processed in an electric vehicle has to go through China. Why in God's green earth we would cede that auto market to the Communist Party of China is beyond me. My opponent has multiple times supported EV mandates, trying to pick the cars that our companies have to build and the cars that you're going to have to buy. And by the way, that got us 2,400 layoffs at Stellantis, 1,000 layoffs at General Motors. Ford is talking about closing 2 lines. The CEO of Ford came out and said this is unworkable. It won't work for America. There's a better way to get where we want to go, like hybrids. By the way, you don't have to plug it in, and you get to keep the auto workers that are here in the state. About 1 million are reliant on building something, a part or something for a gasoline engine. Why we would take 40% of that labor off the table is beyond me.
Congresswoman Slotkin, you have a 30-second rebuttal. I assume there's a lot of things in there.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just don't understand it for someone who claims to care about national security. If you're worried about EVs being built abroad, if you're worried about China having the supply chain, then come back and join us here in Michigan, where we've been trying to bring back our supply chains ever since COVID. We all had our come to Jesus. We all figured out that we had overextended ourselves into China, so we started bringing all kinds of parts back, all kind of mining back, all kinds of things that are important to that supply chain. I am not going to just give it up to China, and my opponent certainly seems to be okay with that.
Congressman Rogers, you have a rebuttal, and again, you all have some real differences here, so you have 30 seconds to try to point out what those are.
And when my opponent talks about bringing things back, she signed a non-disclosure agreement to facilitate a Chinese Communist Party company going up near Big Rapids to bring in Chinese engineers to build a factory that makes components, of which 85% of the components in that battery have to be processed in China. Oh, by the way, when it's fully operating, takes 40% of Michigan auto workers and gets rid of them. Why that is a good plan when there are other things we can do. The electric grid isn't even ready to handle it. We got to fix that. We got to make sure that hybrids is an interim step here before we get to the next one. You beat China by selling Americans cars they want to buy.
Congressman, we're out of time. I want to give you 15 seconds. Congressman said you had signed an NDA. This has been a point of contention between the two of you. So my question, 15 seconds, did you sign an NDA?
I have never signed an NDA with any Chinese government, Chinese entity, Chinese company at all. I found out about that plant when it was in the paper. He repeats it. It is a lie. The Detroit News and every other news source credible has said it so. He should stop repeating it.
Thank you.
True.
Alyssa Slotkin, Congresswoman, Democrat from Michigan, and Senate candidate debating former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers. Debate hosted by WOOD-TV Grand Rapids, Michigan on October 8th. This is one of the 5 or so U.S. Senate races around the country where the polls are so close that, as Real Clear Politics rates it, it is a toss-up, and the outcome will determine which party controls the Senate in the next Congress. You can find the video of this debate and C-SPAN's other extensive Campaign 2024 coverage at our website, cspan.org. WFLA in Florida reports that speaking at Seaport Manatee, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced the state is providing $9.5 million to the port to repair infrastructure damage during Hurricane Milton. DeSantis said the state's goal is to minimize supply chain interruptions that would affect Floridians in need, which is why Florida is investing in the rebuild. The governor said for every $1 the state invests in the port, it would receive $7 return on that investment. That was WFLA TV reporting. During that news conference, Governor DeSantis also gave an update on power restoration.
So as of 12 o'clock, since the storm hit Florida, Hurricane Milton, there have been over 3.8 million accounts restored for power. So right now, about 97% of the state is electrified and operational. There's about 369,000 that are still outstanding. We obviously had a lot of linemen staged, and if you think about it, today, standing here right now, we're less than 96 hours from when the storm fully left the state of Florida, and I know those guys got in and started working as soon as it was possible. I know Manatee and Sarasota's down. I think both are probably 90% restored, and FPL thinks by tomorrow you're going to have pretty much everybody. So that's very rapid, and we appreciate what they've done to be able to do it. And the co-ops are 100% complete with their restoration. So that's really, really good. A lot of times you do these, you have the big utilities, private companies do it first, and then the co-ops will lag a little bit, or at least that's maybe been in the past, but they knocked out a lot of restorations very rapidly. So good job on that.
Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican of Florida, today at Seaport Manatee in Florida. Wall Street today, the Dow up 201, NASDAQ up 159, S&P up 44. And the Dow closed at 43,065, first time above 43,000. S&P also closed at a new record of 58.59. Story from Newsweek, Lilly Ledbetter, a pioneering advocate for pay equality, has passed away at the age of 86. Ledbetter's fight for fair wages was made famous after she learned she had been paid significantly less than her male counterparts, a circumstance this grandmother could not have imaged would propel her into the public eye and the history books. Though Ledbetter never received compensation, her lawsuit led to a significant change in law that would go on to benefit other workers. That was from Newsweek. That law was enacted in 2009, and on the 10th anniversary in 2019, she spoke at a forum on Capitol Hill.
The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was essential to achieving equal pay after the Supreme Court wrongfully denied me and all workers the right to hold employers accountable to federal equal pay laws. The court told me I should have filed and brought my case the first check I received, even though I didn't know it at the time and I had no way to prove it at the time. But when I got the anonymous tip 20 years later, I carried my case to the Equal Employment Commission and then to the federal court and then on to the Supreme Court. As Justice Ginsburg said in her dissent, the Supreme Court majority was out of line with the realities of the American workforce, especially when so many employers ban workers from discussing their pay, like my employer, Goodyear, did. For 20 years, I took home wages tainted by discrimination, wages significantly less than my male colleagues who were junior to me and some I had trained. But I had no idea all through those years that I was being cheated until someone did give me the anonymous tip. I couldn't let the Supreme Court decision stand because I knew this fight was not just about me, Lily Ledbetter. It was about all workers, all women, and all families across this nation who were deprived of their hard-earned money.
Lily Ledbetter at a news conference with members of Congress in 2019 on the 10th anniversary of the Fair Pay Act named for her. She has died at the age of 86. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Democratic California, who was House Speaker when the bill passed, writing on X, "Sadly, we mourn the passing of Lily Ledbetter for her fight against pay discrimination and for justice for our daughters and granddaughters. Lily Ledbetter's name is synonymous with courage, opportunity, and progress." Story from the Washington Examiner. Former U.S. Chamber of Commerce CEO Thomas J. Donahue died Monday at the age of 86, 3 years after stepping down as head of the powerful business group. Donahue became head of the group in 1997 and built it up into a powerful lobbying force in Washington, D.C., with a statement from the Chamber of Commerce hailing him as having given business a seat at the table and a voice in the debate in a way it had never had before. That was from the Washington Examiner. Thomas Donahue was on C-SPAN several times over the years. In 2019, he was at the White House as former President Trump named him a part of the American Workforce Policy Advisory Board.
Mr. President, nice to see you. I'm very pleased to be here. This project addresses itself to the two fundamental challenges we face in the business community and in our society. That is, people without jobs and massive numbers of jobs without people. And I believe the work that will take place here immediately, just with people working with one another, will add to the solution of both of those challenges. Thank you very much.
Thomas Donahue at the White House in 2019, former U.S. Chamber of Commerce CEO. He has passed away at the age of 86. Washington Today continues in a moment.
The House will be in order.
This year, C-SPAN celebrates 45 years of covering Congress like no other. Since 1979, we've been your primary source for Capitol Hill, providing balanced, unfiltered coverage of government, taking you to where the policy's debated and decided, all with the support of America's cable companies. C-SPAN, 45 years and counting, powered by cable. Friday nights, watch C-SPAN's 2024 Campaign Trail, a weekly roundup of C-SPAN's campaign coverage, providing a one-stop shop to discover what the candidates across the country are saying to voters, along with first-hand accounts from political reporters, updated poll numbers, fundraising data, and campaign ads. Watch C-SPAN's 2024 Campaign Trail, Friday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN, online at cspan.org, or download as a podcast on C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, or wherever you get your podcasts. C-SPAN, your unfiltered view of politics.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. An article from Axios about today's U.S. holiday. Columbus Day is the federal holiday on the second Monday in October, but what the state holiday is called, Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, or something else, depends on where you live. Efforts to change the focus of the holiday from celebrating Christopher Columbus to the contributions of Native Americans are ongoing. Lawmakers in Congress reintroduced legislation last fall to have Indigenous Peoples Day replace Columbus Day. Native American advocates have been pushing to get states to swap Columbus Day for Indigenous Peoples Day since the early 1990s. That was from Axios. Senator Martin Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, one of the states that does recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, and an advocate for making it the federal law, posted a video today.
Native peoples have lived in the land that we now call New Mexico and the United States for thousands of years. I'm honored to work with the pueblos and tribes who call New Mexico home, and with tribes all across Indian country. As part of that work, I've been proud to lead legislation in the Senate to reframe this national holiday as Indigenous Peoples Day. New Mexico is one of a growing number of states that already recognizes this change. And 3 years ago, President Biden became the first president to formally commemorate Indigenous Peoples Day. Reframing this holiday is a powerful way for us to acknowledge and heal from painful history. It also inspires us to celebrate the enduring strength and resilience of Native people. Today and every day, I am committed to uplifting tribal communities and defending tribal sovereignty and self-determination.
Senator Martin Heinrich, Democrat from New Mexico, in a video on X. Congressman Mike Lawler, Republican of New York, posting on X, "Today we celebrate the enormous impact Italian Americans have had on our community and country. As a longtime member of the Bravo Sons of Italy, whose new Christopher Columbus statue I helped welcome 2 weeks ago, I'm proud to say Happy Columbus Day." Here is Congressman Lawler at that statue dedication on September 28th.
I am a proud member of this lodge. I'm a proud Italian American and have been proud to represent this community in both the state legislature and now in Congress. And one thing that I will always do is stand up for our Italian American heritage, for our Italian American community, and fight to preserve Columbus Day and the many achievements, accomplishments, and contributions that Italian Americans have made to make the United States the greatest country on the face of the earth. When some of my New York City colleagues tried to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, I proudly fought back and stood up against that because not only is it trying to rewrite history, but it is trying to erase the contributions of Italian Americans. And we can and should recognize others and their contributions to this great country, but not at the expense of Italian Americans. And that is why I'm so proud to be here today for this statue unveiling. And I want to thank our fellow Italian Americans from Virginia who fought the good fight and did the work to restore this beautiful statue and for graciously entrusting this lodge with protecting and preserving not only the statue, but our Italian American heritage and the many contributions that have resulted from Christopher Columbus's exploration of the West. And you can cheer for that.
Congressman Mike Lawler, Republican from New York, on September 28th at the Sons of Italy Bravo, New York Lodge, where he is a member. A rededication of that statue of Christopher Columbus, the 2,000-pound bronze statue, had been vandalized and defaced during protests in Richmond, Virginia in 2020. It was cleaned up and sent up to New York. The Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences was awarded today to 2 researchers from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and a third from the University of Chicago. New York Times article says they received the prize for their research into how institutions shape which countries become wealthy and prosperous and how those structures came to exist in the first place. The laureates delved into the world's colonial past to trace how gaps emerged between nations, arguing that countries that started out with more inclusive institutions during the colonial period tended to become more prosperous. Their pioneering use of theory and data has helped to better explain the reasons for persistent inequality between nations, according to the Nobel Committee. That was from a New York Times article. Here's the announcement at the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences in Stockholm. First, the Academy Secretary General Hans Ellengren, and then Chair of the Selection Committee, Jakob Svensson.
This year's prize is about understanding differences in prosperity between nations. The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has decided to award Sveriges Riksbankspris in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel for 2024 to Darren Ashimoglu, MIT, Cambridge, USA, Simon Johnson, MIT, Cambridge, USA, and James Robinson, University of Chicago, USA, for studies of how institutions are formed and affect prosperity. Professor Jakob Svensson will now give us a short summary. Please, Jakob.
Thank you. Global inequality is largely driven by differences in average income across countries. But why are some countries poor while others prosper? And why are the gaps between poor and rich nations so persistent? These are not new questions, but they are among the most urgent in the social sciences. And addressing them is extremely challenging. This year's laureates have pioneered new approaches, both empirical and theoretical, that have significantly advanced our understanding of global inequality. On the empirical side, their work has greatly enhanced the study of the causal effects of institution on prosperity. In so doing, they have identified the historical roots of the weak institutional environments that characterize many low-income countries today. On the theoretical side, their research explains why extractive economic institutions and dictatorships often persist, even though reforming them would benefit most. It also outlines conditions under which institutions are likely to change. Reducing the huge differences in income between countries is one of our time's greatest challenges. Thanks to Darren Ashimoglu, Simon Johnson, and James Robinson's groundbreaking research, we have a much deeper understanding of the root causes of why countries fail or succeed.
Jakob Svensson chairs the Committee for the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, and you heard from Hans Ellegren, Secretary General, Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, at the award announcement today in Stockholm, Sweden. An AP article reads, the Economics Prize is formally known as the Bank of Sweden Prize in Economic Sciences in memory of Alfred Nobel. The central bank established it in 1968 as a memorial to Nobel, the 19th century Swedish businessman and chemist who invented dynamite and established the Nobel Prizes. Though Nobel purists stress that the Economics Prize is technically not a Nobel Prize, it's always presented together with the others. On December 10th, the anniversary of Nobel's death in 1896. That was from Associated Press. The United States, writes NBC News, announced it is sending an advanced anti-missile system and a number of troops to Israel, deepening America's involvement in the spiraling conflict as the region readies for Israeli retaliatory strikes against Iran. The decision was announced just hours before a Hezbollah drone strike on an Israeli base killed 4 soldiers and wounded 61 others without triggering an alert. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, known as THAAD, usually requires about 100 troops to operate and has 6 truck-mounted launchers with 8 interceptors on each launcher, as well as a powerful radar. It's capable of intercepting ballistic missiles at ranges of 100 to 125 miles. That was from NBC News. The Army Secretary, Christine Wormuth, and the Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, were asked about this at a news conference in Washington at the Association of the U.S. Army annual meeting and exposition.
The U.S. announced yesterday that it's sending a THAAD battery to Israel. Can you say, where is that going to be coming from? And more broadly, can you talk about the strain on the Army's sort of air defense soldiers and systems, and where you think this is going, how the Army can address this?
Sure, I'll start, Lita. The THAAD deployment's going to have about 100 soldiers who will go over to Israel. That's not a very large number of soldiers, so it's not adding, a tremendous amount of additional strain broadly to the community. But as you know, the air defense artillery community is the most stressed. They have the highest op tempo, really, of any part of the Army. And I think, what we're trying to do to manage that is really two things. One is modernizing our integrated air and missile defenses to try to create more capacity. And that's why I mentioned in my speech this morning the fact that we're moving to have the LTAMS radar work with the IBCS system. That's going to greatly increase the capacity of the existing Patriot force that we have, and that will, help do some to relieve some stress on our soldiers. And the other thing we're doing is we're just constantly trying to be as disciplined as we can and give the Secretary Austin, the information he needs to accurately assess the strain on the force when he's considering future operational deployments. We have to be as choosy as we can be about what we take on, but of course in a world this volatile, sometimes we have to do what we have to do. I don't know, Chief, if you want to add.
Yeah, I just to agree completely with the Secretary. I mean, this is our most deployed formation, I think, and everybody wants U.S. Army Air Defense Forces. We've seen them every time we've gone out. I think we've gone and seen them around the world. I've been very, very impressed. Everywhere I go, they're super motivated. And I was laughing a little bit. I saw them in the Middle East, and the only thing that they asked me for was a beaver fit gym to work out while they're over there. So they're staying very motivated. What we owe them, and we've done, Secretary talked about what we've done with recruiting. We're well over 100%. That's one MOS that we're monitoring very specifically to grow that capability and look at continuing to grow that capability in the next couple of years. And then I think what we need to do is with LTAMS and IBCS, what we're doing is working to see how we can pull all that left. So we have prototypes that are out there. There's a lot of software work that's involved with that. So I think those are the kinds of things that we need to do besides growing the capacity, is seeing what we can do to transform them as well to help alleviate some of that burden.
And where is it coming from?
I don't think we're going to comment on the operational details this morning.
Army Secretary Christine Wormuth and the Army Chief of Staff General Randy George at the Washington, D.C. Convention Center, a news conference as part of the Association of the U.S. Army annual meeting and exposition. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the training base where Hezbollah drone attack on Sunday killed 4 Israeli soldiers and injured more than 60, saying Israel will continue to strike Hezbollah mercilessly across Lebanon, and we are fighting a tough campaign against Iran's axis of evil. Also from Politico, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is examining a plan to seal off humanitarian aid to northern Gaza in an attempt to starve out Hamas militants, a plan that, if implemented, could trap without food or water hundreds of thousands of Palestinians unwilling or unable to leave their homes. Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, the House Speaker Emerita, was in London today, interviewed at Chatham House, asked about the wars in the Middle East.
Let me just ask you about the Middle East, what you think the next president of the U.S. Should do to try to bring about a resolution of what is going on at the moment?
Well, I think you see two different visions there. The former president has said, we'll just end it in a minute. What does that mean? What does that mean? And if you think of what happened on October 7th, the anniversary just a few days ago, of a terrorist organization, Hamas, dedicated to the destruction of the state of Israel. 1,400 people dead, hostages kidnapped, and the rest. It was a horrible thing. The reaction with the collateral damage to civilians in Gaza is a tragedy. It's so sad and gets sadder by the day because more people are vulnerable. Joe Biden and the Democrats have for a long time supported a two-state solution. A two-state solution. A solution is the key word, not a two-state anything, a two-state solution where these countries, people can live in peace.
And do you still think that that is credible?
Well, not with Netanyahu. No, I don't think he's ever believed in peace or the two-state solution. I'm just very, very disappointed. The U.S., we've always supported Israel. It is our ally. We shared values. It was in our national strategic interest to support Israel. We continue to support Israel, but not the deaths of so much collateral damage. Now, there are those who say the Israelis are taking very great precautions. Well, clearly not enough.
U.S. House Speaker Emerita, Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, today in London at Chatham House, officially the Royal Institute of International Affairs, British think tank. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday urged the United Nations to remove its peacekeeping forces on the Israel-Lebanon border. Its mission known as UNIFIL, saying they become hostages to Hezbollah, a suggestion the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has rejected. Today, the Secretary General's spokesperson, Stefan Dujarric, spoke about it at his daily news conference at the UN in New York City.
UNIFIL continuously assesses and reviews all factors to determine its own posture and its own presence at its positions across the blue line. The mission is taking all possible measures to ensure the protection of its peacekeepers. UNIFIL's roles and its presence in southern Lebanon, as you know very well, is mandated by the UN Security Council. In this context, UNIFIL is committed to preserving its capacity to support diplomatic solution based on Security Council Resolution 1701, which, as far as we are concerned, is the only way forward. You saw over the weekend a series of events happening along the blue line in which our peacekeeping mission positions were impacted and some of the peacekeepers were hurt. UNIFIL colleagues had said that since October 1st, UNIFIL positions have been impacted on 20 occasions, including by direct fire, and on one occasion breached by 2 tanks from the IDF. To address these issues, among others, the head of our peacekeeping department, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, will be briefing the Security Council later this afternoon in closed consultations, and he's expected to underscore a concern with respect to the continuing exchange of fire across the blue line, as well as the repeated impacts on UNIFIL positions in recent days. 5 peacekeepers have been injured during these recent incidents, including one peacekeeper who sustained a bullet wound. The peacekeepers have been treated and are in stable condition. The source of that gunfire has yet to be confirmed by UNIFIL. You will have seen various statements issued by UNIFIL this weekend, and also a statement issued on Sunday on behalf of the Secretary General, in which he reiterated that UNIFIL's personnel and its premises must never be targeted. Attacks against peacekeepers are in breach of international law, including international humanitarian law, and they may constitute war crime. He called on all parties, including the IDF, to refrain from any and all actions that put our peacekeepers at risk.
Stefan Dujarric, spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General at his daily news conference at the UN in New York City. And the Washington Post reports that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told the United States that Israel is willing to strike Iranian military targets and not nuclear or oil ones. The Post cites 2 officials familiar with the matter. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Subscribe to C-SPAN's free evening newsletter Word for Word, and we'll send you the stories making headlines in Washington, sent to your inbox every day. Sign up at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.